It's beautiful. I've seen other graves from where British soldiers lie, and this is about the most beautiful grave cemetery I've ever seen. And the beauty of it is that the Koreans come here, bring their children, and they tell them about the men that lie here.
This service is taking place at the foot of the hill on which a whole British battalion, the 1st Battalion of the Gloucestershire Regiment, was almost completely wiped out.
It's tough enough to climb, let alone to fight on, but this is where the Gloucesters made their last stand. Cut off, surrounded and out of ammunition when it was all over. At the final roll call, they could muster just 67 men out of a battalion of more than 600. It may be more than 5,000 miles from home, but for those who fought here, this will always be Gloucester Hill.
Its sovereignty intact, 60 years on, South Korea has risen from the ruins of war. Derek Kinney won the George Cross for the part he played, and he wants more people back home to understand what British forces helped this country to achieve.
I helped them to do what they did. So in my little way, part of that is me. So no, I think they're wrong in not understanding what it's all about.
But caught between World War II and Vietnam, the conflict that raged across this rugged landscape is somehow less remembered. Perhaps this year, with the return of so many veterans, that will change. John Sudworth, BBC News, Seoul.
From desert safari to catwalk style, Africa is changing.
It's not just people there in Africa, the dark continent. There's colour. I mean, people dress funky, they express themselves differently.
BBC 4 meets the many faces of a continent.
That's why I'm here, because I wanted to meet these guys and I wanted to hear their stories.
But it's only the beginning. This is when the work starts.
We have to recover our humanity.
Wonderful Africa, coming soon to BBC 4.
Europe's airlines and airports say it's time to reassess the shutdown of air travel. After a 4th day of chaos caused by volcanic ash, they say the restrictions may be out of proportion. The closure of UK airspace is extended again, this time until tomorrow morning. Millions of passengers are stranded at airports across the world.
I need to get home to my little boy. He's waiting for me now. He's been waiting for me for 2 days. And he just wants his mummy.
Labour and the Conservatives step up their attacks as polls suggest support for the Liberal Democrats continues to surge. And victory for Jenson Button in the Chinese Grand Prix makes it a British 1-2 alongside teammate Lewis Hamilton. Good evening. Europe's airports and airlines affected by the shutdown of air travel are calling for the restrictions to be reassessed. They say although safety is an absolute priority, the closing of airspace may be out of proportion to the risk posed by volcanic ash from Iceland. The suspension of air travel in and out of the UK has been extended again, this time until 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. John Brain has the latest.
It's a spectacular sight, but the disruption it's causing is almost as dramatic as the views it's providing. The Icelandic volcano has grounded airliners, left passengers stranded and businesses suffering. It's also causing frayed tempers.
So what are they queuing up for?
Every other country.
There's going to be civil unrest.
The lack of flights is putting pressure on other forms of transport. The police were called to Portsmouth Harbour last night after frustrated ferry passengers protested at being held up by immigration.
Given that there were hundreds of people with young children who'd been travelling for days to get there, there was absolute outrage.
Compare that with Heathrow today. The only activity at Europe's busiest airport was that of ground staff checking the runway before a test flight scheduled for this evening. Nothing else has been moving. Well, these planes have been stuck here for 4 days now. This is becoming one of the most extraordinary chapters in aviation history. Of course, no airline is prepared to put its passengers at risk, but some are questioning whether the prolonged closure of airspace is entirely necessary. This afternoon, after successful test flights in Germany and the Netherlands, the major European carriers called for the current restrictions to be reassessed immediately.
These experimental flights that have started to take place now, that's what will determine whether we're being too careful or not.
But some scientists believe there could still be worse to come.
This is some